So D&D, well, not that D&D, maybe not much of a difference, but they are adapting the three-body problem for Netflix, their first big project after Game of Thrones. So before they ruin it, I wanted to read it to see for myself, because once there is a garbage adaptation, it's just hard to get into it. Like, I will never read Aragon, right? I don't know if I can ever read Percy Jackson at this point. Okay, actually, before I start, I want to check what the blurb says. I don't want to be spoilery. Okay, it actually gives away everything? Alright, well, that's how it is then. This is a super popular book, but I thought it was okay. I'll tell you why in a numbered list, but it is about first contact. There is a secret Chinese military project, and they're able to get a message to aliens. The alien planet is uninhabitable, so they're like, cool, we'll come invade your planet. And humans are like, cool, that's what we wanted anyway. Come save us from this bullshit. And the aliens are like, what? I mean, that's the book. There are different camps of humans. Some want them to invade, others don't. That kind of situation. This is all in the blurb. I'm not saying anything extra. And I think that sounds pretty interesting, but that's a really small portion of the book. So problem number one with the three-body problem is pacing. Oh, the pacing. So although this is what it says on the blurb, this doesn't actually start until like 60% into the book. The first part is so drawn out with science-plaining. And it's not even science fiction. It's really just trying to explain what the three-body problem is. There's this VR game. I think it's pretty on the nose what's happening, but I'm not gonna get into the details because I think it's kind of fun to discover it yourself. But basically, if you know what the three-body problem is, there isn't much else there. The three-body problem is that it's extremely unlikely to predict the orbits of three celestial objects. Like, we can't predict Earth's movement around the sun, but if there's a system with three stars, it would be impossible to know where and when the stars would be. It's an actual physics problem. There are some different solution models, so it's not exactly impossible, but the accuracy is still low. It's still interesting how the book explains it to you. It shows you a civilization trying to figure out their sun's movements so they can prepare accordingly. These beings can dehydrate themselves and stay in that state for long periods of time if they can predict when they need to do that. But like, just when they are like, okay, we got it, then something happens and there's a long winter and everyone is confused. It's kind of fun, but so much of the book goes to the science planning, which is not very unlikely in hard sci-fi if you're used to reading that. But then there are random chapters of characters being like, okay, now sit down and let me tell you my whole backstory. I'm like, what? How did we get here? So that's the second problem, redundancy. Oh, the redundancy. There is so much filler in this book. Even the game chapters get exhausting. There's like this human calculator thing. It was just silly. The book tries so hard to science-plain it. I am curious if anyone found it exciting. Let me know in the comments if you read it. But I think all this maybe would be forgivable if the book had good characters. But that's the biggest problem with the book. Characters are some of the weakest I've ever seen. They are just so boring. There are those forced backstory chapters, but I really care about the actions of the characters in the story. It feels like the author wrote a bunch of backstory chapters for his characters as an exercise, but then also included them in the book. I think that kind of info dumping works best if it's dispersed throughout the book and you just mention them where relevant, but there's nowhere relevant because there is no characterization. Too harsh? Perhaps. Now, obviously it's a translation, but I felt like it was a good translation. The translator had notes and everything. Those were helpful. It is obvious the translator is also a writer. The ending is meh. This is a trilogy, so it's just the beginning. But the main thing that is revealed at the end is just too magical for me. It feels too omnipotent. For those who read it, I'm talking about the multitasking. It just doesn't make sense to have something that powerful but I haven't read the rest of the books. It will possibly be addressed, and I guess it will have weaknesses. The problem is I'm probably not gonna read it. I don't really care about any of the characters. There is zero relationship development between the characters in this book. There is zero character arc. Nobody really changes. They're all the same. It's just not very interesting when there's no character journey for me. Also, the beginning is so brutal, but that goes away afterwards. It's just a few chapters in the past that was sort of a huge tone shift. But I guess it was differentiating between the two different eras. On the other hand, I do think D&D have some good material here. I mean, at the end of the day, they did show that they were able to make good adaptations when they had the material finished. If they can cast some great actors, work on the dialogue a bit, come up with more complex relationships, it is important that difficult things don't only happen in the past. The drama needs to happen today in the current story between the characters. There are some twists and turns that will work well on a TV series. It can work. Like, I started the video a bit hopeless about D&D, but you know, they are able to manage large sets. That sort of experience is important. They're gonna mess it up, aren't they? Well, let me know what you think about this adaptation in the comments. Also, let me know if you think I should continue reading the series. Does it get better? And if you'd like to see more sci-fi content, I have a Project Hail Mary review somewhere here, especially if you like hard sci-fi. I also have a Dune versus Foundation adaptation video, so make sure you check those out if you're interested, and I'll see you in the next video.